Welcome back to the Penny Stock Detective, where we expose Canada's scams, corruption in the world of penny stocks. Today, we're talking about money laundering, drug trafficking, and Islamic terror financing, and how it all ties in with the Canadian Scam Exchange, aka the Canadian Securities Exchange, and also, yes, even the Toronto Scam Exchange, which is, I guess they call it Toronto Venture, TSX Venture. They're both basically Canada's penny stock exchanges. They are a hotbed of money laundering basically used in the world of drug trafficking and now Islamic terror financing. Now, I don't want to be Islamophobic, because I know there's also the Indians are involved. There's a lot of Indians in Canada, and there's a whole thing which I'm not that aware of with the Hindu separatist movements, all this stuff going on, which is a little bit over my pay grade. But listen, Canada has a lot of immigrant groups from all these third world countries. They come to the country, and here's what you got to realize: a lot of these immigrants are actually pretty sharp, right? Usually, countries get like the best of the people who are smart. They leave, right? And so if they can't get into the U.S., right, they go to Canada, right? So the best always come to America. That's a fact. That's why Elon Musk, Shamath Palihapitiya, they came to the U.S. Actually, they came to Canada first because they couldn't get in, but then they obviously got into the U.S. Nobody who is smart stays in Canada, because it's just a corrupt, sleazy country, which we've been exposing here. But here's what's going on. There was a story today about the U.S. Treasury sanctioning a company called 7 Seas, which is based in Vancouver, of course. Where else? Scamcouver. And basically, they've been using essentially some guy. I guess he's Lebanese. I don't have the details, but he is, I think they've put about $100 million into Hezbollah. And this is a lady named, what is her name? Anita Anand, who is some Canadian, I don't know, she's a parliament. I don't know what these Canadians are doing with the way their whole crooked government works, but she's one of their crooked government officials. And the press was asking her about
Mr. Anand, do you think we'll talk about 7 Seas being sanctioned by the U.S. for apparent Hezbollah connections?
There you go. So she's being asked, will the Canadian government sanction 7 Seas, because the U.S. has sanctioned them because they've been, sending money to finance terror in the Middle East. Okay, that's right. So Canada basically is the source of funds used to kill innocent men, women, and children. Okay, whether it's in the Middle East. We're talking about whether you have stuff going on in India. To a lesser degree, you have stuff in China. There's the organized crime, generally speaking, when it comes to scam stocks. Most of the Chinese, really, like the really smart scammers, they're using NASDAQ because they're much more sophisticated. The Canadian Scam Exchange, the TSX, the CSC, the Canadian Scam Exchange, that's basically very easy to get on there. I'll explain to you how all this works, because I've seen it done many times. Let's watch this again. So she's being asked, will she do anything about stopping terror financing from Vancouver?
He's being sanctioned by the U.S. for apparent Hezbollah connections.
And look at that. She just walks right past them. Again, one of these smug, arrogant politicians. Just like you see these smug, arrogant scumbags at the Canadian Securities Exchange. You got this Mark Faulkner, you got this tricky Dick Carleton, who is known to be an associate of the rapist and pedophile Peter Nygard, who's currently in prison. Let me put that on the screen, because we could never get enough of it. I mean, this is just, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Let's get that on the screen. Here we go. Hang on, so let's get this. There we go. So right there, you see the guy with the arrow. That is Peter Nygard, who's currently sitting in prison for basically rape, sex trafficking. Some of his victims have been as young as 10 years old. He's awaiting extradition to the U.S. I think he's raped about 100 girls. There is actually a whole video we have there. You should check it out. And here he is pictured with the CEO of the Canadian Securities Exchange, who is all smiles. That's right. Look at those guys. They're all smiling and happy together. And by the way, this is just a couple of years ago. This picture is still up on their website, on their Instagram page. So Dicky Carleton, he still has this picture. He's very proud of this picture on their Instagram page. You would think he would be smarter, but he's not. He's not very bright, as are his underlings. Because, see, the way it works is, when you're running a corrupt organization, you want people underneath you to be loyal. Okay, so you got to hire people who basically can't get jobs anywhere else. They got to be really stupid, like Mark Faulkner, who's just an incredibly dumb. He's basically the regulator. He's in charge of regulating this exchange. He's basically the top cop of this scam exchange. Can you imagine this? That's a job with great responsibility. And you know what? He's the only regulator of all the stock exchanges who does not have a law degree. He's the only one without a law degree. I did another video about this. Check it out over there at the in our links. He's the only regulator, whether it's the TSX, the CBO, NEO, whatever they call the even the OTC pink sheets has a guy who's gone to law school, who's got a law background. Mark Faulkner doesn't even have a stockbroker's license. The guy, he was a motorcycle instructor for 30 years at a place called Humber College, which, from what I understand, is basically a diploma mill for migrants who come to Canada to get a student visa, and then they overstay. Listen, Canada has a very serious problem with immigration, right? And what's happened is, like, the natives of Canada, which is the white people of Canada, okay, they are being overrun by all these third world countries right now, which is ironic because the white people of Canada, which is like this guy Richard Carleton, Mark Faulkner, all these Anglos, they came to Canada a couple hundred years. So they are the original colonizers. They came to Canada. They stole the land from the Indians, the natives, whatever they would, First Nations. I don't know, whatever they call basically the natives. Okay, the British, these British by the way, the British who came to Canada, they're all third rate. It's just like the U.S. It's the ones who couldn't get into the U.S. They came to Canada. That's the way it worked. And by the way, those British are the ones that fought against the U.S. in the Revolutionary War. So guys, never forget that these Canadians, they're all scumbags, and they're the ones that burnt down the White House in the War of 1812. They are our enemies. Doug Ford is our enemy for the Americans. Now, why is Canada not taking terror financing seriously? Why is it? Because they're too stupid. They don't take the money laundering, they don't take it, drug trafficking. They don't take this stuff seriously because, generally speaking, these immigrant groups who are involved in various organized crime, they are much smarter than the Canadians. Here's the problem: the Canadians are very lazy. Okay, unlike the U.S. In the U.S., law enforcement generally pretty smart. You remember, it all goes back to, you had Elliot Ness busted Al Capone. You had J. Edgar Hoover. When he wasn't wearing a dress, he was really good at going after crime or whatever. The mob, which supposedly doesn't exist, right? So the U.S. has very smart people. You had Rudy Giuliani. By the way, Rudy Giuliani, America's greatest mayor. That is the guy who put New York back on the map. I mean, the place was falling apart. It was a third world country. Crime, it was crazy. Giuliani cleaned up. He was the attorney general. He was a tough guy. He was a very tough guy. And maybe became a little bit corrupt at the end. Yeah, that's what happens with everybody. Very possible. But the Americans have always been much smarter. The problem with Canadians is they're generally lazy. They're very lazy. Mark Faulkner is an example that you see right there. And let me bring up the picture. You see this guy. He's at the left. He's got the drink in hand. You got this guy, Rob Cook. See, they're always drinking. They're always a bunch of drunks. Okay, they're always drinking. This guy's got 2 drinks in his hand, Rob Cook. By the way, they're both corrupt. They're both involved in a criminal matter, criminal fraud that is I have actually sent a criminal investigation request to the RCMP, the Ontario Securities Commission, and the BCSC because they defrauded my company I was involved with called New World Solutions. They ripped off, they raped 4,000 investors, and about $5 million was lost. The victims, 4,000, mostly small investors. A lot of these, by the way, are immigrants. Yes, 80% of them are, Asian, Indian, Muslim, various immigrants who come to Canada. Those are most of the shareholders in New World Solutions. If I look at the shareholders, they're all immigrant names. There's very few, Ians and Trevors and Nigels. Okay, and listen, the reason it happens is very simple because these guys are running a crony network. All right, they take care of their own. Okay, Mark Faulkner, these guys are all a part of a crony group. I'll explain to you later, but basically these guys are a part of a patronage system. The OSC is not doing anything about them, which is bigger regulator. Why? because they're all in bed together. I'll explain to you in another video. We have, of course, I believe it's Susan Greenglass, who's the regulator at the OSC. She's doing nothing about these guys. Why? Because she's in bed with them, okay? Her best friend is their chief legal officer, okay? I'm going to expose that in another video. Today, let's talk about money laundering. So here is the situation. The reason these guys are very attracted to the Canadian penny stocks is because it is very easy to put together one of these scam companies, and it's what I call and basically it becomes either a pump and dump or what I call a fake it till you make it, okay? In case you don't know, I literally wrote the book on how to make 10 times your money with cheap stocks, okay? I've created over $1 trillion in wealth for investors in the last 30 years working with penny stocks, small cap stocks, thousands of companies. And by the way, just on the CSC, my clients, purely as a direct result of my work, have raised about $2 billion in the last 5 years. And $2 billion in shareholder wealth was created. $2 billion in shareholder wealth. I think about $400 million in growth capital was raised. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. I'll show you those things. But here's the thing. A lot of these companies in Canada, on these exchanges, they're not real companies. They're basically fugazis. They're what I call either a pump and dump or a fake it till you make it. What's a fake it till you make it? That is the most pervasive Canadian penny stock. It's basically some promoter, some guy puts together a concept stock. So whatever is hot, he's going to do a version of it. For example, like, when the cannabis first came out, of course, marijuana, that's the low-hanging fruit. These guys, they're all a bunch of drug dealers in Canada, right? Why is the Canadian Securities Exchange, half their listings are marijuana, psychedelics, and now you got cocaine. I think it's pharmaceutical cocaine for whatever, but then they want to push it to recreational use for cocaine. Again, these are all illegal substances in the U.S. And of course, when you have an exchange that's built on the drug business, because these are all ex-drug dealers who came to the exchange, okay? They're all ex-drug dealers. You had like 300 marijuana companies on these exchanges. How do you think these guys got into that business? They were doing something illegal, okay? It's kind of like the bootlegging business, okay? The bootlegging business, look at the Kennedys. Joe Kennedy, the father of JFK. What was his business in the 1920s? He was a bootlegger. That's right. He was basically a drug trafficker of today, bringing in whiskey from Canada into the U.S. So Canada has a long history of illicit trade, narcotics, or whatever it is. By the way, my personal take on it is, I do believe marijuana should be heavily regulated. It's really not good for people's health. It really is not. It can screw up people's brain. A lot of these psychedelics, a lot of serious issues. Okay. I believe, listen, people should do whatever they want, but it should be regulated. It creates a lot more damage than people believe. It's a terrible thing. I know a lot of very talented people who, they became really stupid after, getting hooked on marijuana. They start smoking and all, they just go downhill. I mean, you could say the same thing about alcohol, I guess, also. So, whatever. But anyway, there's a reason why these things have been regulated. Now, the exchange was overrun by all these drug dealers. It's very easy to set up and go public on the Canadian markets. Okay, you set up a company very quick. Now, here's the trick. Okay, here is the trick. The stock, okay, the stock that you get, let's say as a CEO of a company, you're not going to put it under your own name. Why? Because then you can't sell it. It's restricted for a period of time, whether it is, 2 years, whatever it is, 2 years, a year, whatever the period is. And even if it becomes free trading, when you sell it, everybody knows you're selling it because you have to, file a form and everybody knows, oh my God, the CEO is selling, the insiders are selling. So that's why you almost never see Canadian insiders selling. Why is that? How do they make money? Well, because most of these guys on paper, they only own a little bit of the company. What they do is most of the stock they have in under their cousin's name. Okay, so they give out. So let's say they get 100% of the company. They get 100% of the company, but they give 5% to Ahmed, to 4% to Abdul, 3% to Singh, etc. Here's the thing. A lot of these immigrant groups in Canada, they have large families, whether it's the Middle Easterners, the Indians, the Asians, not so much. That's why we don't see it so much with like the Chinese. When I say Asian, I'm referring to pretty much Chinese. Okay, so that's the major immigrant group in Canada, right? So they're mostly in Vancouver, right? But they have relatively small families, and they're kind of peculiar in a way. So they don't really pass that much stock around to, like, 20 relatives. The Middle Easterners, the Muslims, they have large families, cousins. So there could be a company, the CEO owns, he only has 5% on paper or 10%, whatever it is. He's got 80% of it with his cousins, okay, and who could sell at any time. So what they do is they run up the stock, okay? They run up the stock, and it's a pump and dump, basically. There's a massive pump. And meanwhile, all these guys, they sell off the shares, and it's never reported. And then it goes in, whose pockets does it go into? Now, this is where the money laundering comes in. This is where the money laundering comes in with this company 7Cs. This is because these guys, they sell the shares, and I don't know, they wire to their buddy in Hamas, okay, the buddy at Hezbollah, at Islamic Jihad, at Al Qaeda, at ISIS, whatever it is, whatever the flavor of the month is, okay, the IRGC. So 7Cs apparently was associated with the Iranians. Now, there's a lot of Iranians in Canada, okay? When I say Iranians, I'm talking about the Iranians who are involved with the IRGC, okay, with the caliphate or whatever they are, the Ayatollahs, okay? Those are the guys that killed 40,000 of their own people. Now, you don't see anybody talking about it. How is it that Iran shot and killed 40,000 protesters in the street, young people? That's right. The Iranians killed 30,000 of their own people. You don't see anybody talking about it. You don't see protests. Why? How about this scumbag in Canada who's another penny stock scammer, this guy Chris Parry, who's constantly posting anti-Semitic content. He's obsessed with the Jews, obsessed with Israel. All day on his Twitter is all Israel. Did he ever say anything about 30,000 Iranians getting killed by their own people? No, crickets. How about stuff that goes on in Yemen when the Saudis were killing the crickets? Sudan, crickets. No Jews, no news. As far as, again, you got these leftist Marxists. They generally, leftist Marxists, which is very funny. The leftists and Marxists are aligned with the Muslims. Why is that? I don't know. You see this stuff, this gays for Gaza stuff. It blows my mind. Why? Because the Muslims look at these guys as kufirs. Okay, these guys are haram. Okay, they're all atheists. Okay, these left wingers are all atheists. They're disgusting human beings. And the first thing that the Muslims will do when they take over Canada is they will be executing all these people. Okay, inshallah, they will execute all these kufirs. First thing they do, just like what they did in Iran. In Iran, the Marxists were aligned with the Ayatollah at the revolution. As soon as the Ayatollah got power, killed all the Marxists, put them in jail, whatever. Okay, they're all gone. Anyway, so basically that's the way it works. Now, listen, hey, we're not being Islamophobic here. I'm not only singling out Muslims. The same thing happens with the Indians, except the Indians, they got some different things. They're not doing like a bunch of different terror stuff. They got some sort of, I think, separatist movement going on, which I'm not that familiar with. And by the way, it's not my business. Okay, they can do whatever they want. It's not my business. But there is some sort of Sikh thing going on, and yes, so the same thing happens. I'm sure they're doing the very same thing. So let me explain. A stock gets pumped up. There's a concept stock. It gets pumped up. It goes from 10 cents to $1. Okay, the valuation of the stock goes from 5 million to 50 million. Okay, now the CEO and his cousins own $40 million worth of stock, and basically $30 million gets dumped onto the market by the cousins, and that money gets sent to, again, whatever the terror group is, whether it's for. Hey, I don't want to discriminate against the Indians and also the Muslims. There's also a lot of drug traffickers who get involved in this in some way or another. Now, what about the Russians? Okay. How come you're not talking about the Russians organized crime? Is it because you're a Russian? Well, I'll tell you what. I do know for a fact. Okay, now I know 100% for a fact that there are let's just say there is organized crime. Okay, members of organized crime from the U.S. that are involved with Canadian companies. 100%, I know that. I know for a fact. Okay, now when I was starting in the business, in the early 90s, I wouldn't say most. A lot of the penny stock market was controlled by the mob. Okay, that was mostly the Italian mob, and you had some Russians. It was different groups, okay? And it turns out, I did a lot of business for companies that were controlled by the mob. Did I know about it? They looked a little bit suspicious or whatever. As far as I know, I did everything by the book. Yeah, I had all my full disclosures, everything else. But some of these guys did end up, going to prison in the roundup by the FBI. There was a big roundup by the FBI of organized crime controlling the penny stock market in the U.S. That was a real thing. Okay, there's a lot of that stuff was controlled by the mob in the U.S. They still have a little bit of involvement, but it's much easier to do this stuff in Canada. Now the thing with the Italians, it was smaller in a way because I think because they don't have like these much bigger families. It's a lot of it is kind of family, because you have to trust people. That's really what it comes down to. Okay, if you're giving out shares to a bunch of people, here is why you had people getting killed in the U.S. There was a number of stock promoters who were killed in the U.S. There was some suspicious homicides in the U.S. Why? Well, they got shares in one of these pump and dumps, which I guess they were supposed to kick the money back, and they didn't. So they were disposed of. So when you're doing a pump and dump, you have to basically trust the people that you're parking your shares with. So if it's a tight family clan, a clan, let's say, right? The same tribal group, whatever it is, much easier. You have much better trust. That's where you have like these Muslim money transfer things. It's what is it called? The system. There's like a money transfer system used throughout the Islamic world. It's which basically, by the way, was invented originally by the Jews, and then the Muslims copied it. But that was something back in I think the Jews invented that in the medieval ages in Europe. Okay, because there were Jews living all over, and you had one group that would transfer money to another group because they were involved in banking. So that's basically that is how international banking got started in Europe, because you had a group of people again who they had the same rules. Okay, they could trust each other, so that's why they were able to send whatever it is 1,000 ducats from Milan to London. That is how the European finance got built. Then you have a version of this with the Islamic finance or whatever money transfer. Again, I'm not that familiar with it, but the situation is this: it's a group. They could trust each other. They have the same more or less thing, and that's why they can trust their cousin with $5 million worth of stock, because more or less they know where he is. Whereas the Italians, they really can't. All right, the Russians for sure they can't. The Russians are much smaller families. The Chinese also much smaller. So they can't. They can't do it. The Indians could do it also to a degree. So I know people would say, "Oh, this guy's racist. He's anti-migrant, anti-immigrant." Well, listen, I am an immigrant to the United States. Okay, I came to the United States at 7 years old. Okay, with my mother, and I think we had $200. Okay, and thanks to this country, freedom of speech, the opportunities of America, I was able to make something of myself and also contribute. Okay, I've employed literally hundreds of people. I've created literally $1 trillion in shareholder wealth for investors. Okay, and I wish I had only 1% of that. But that's okay. It's okay. I think I've done okay. The point is this: I'm all for immigration as long as it's controlled, legal immigration, not what's been going on in the U.S. or what's going on in Canada, which is really changing the whole face of the country. I mean, you can't even recognize Canada from 20 years ago. I haven't stepped foot in Canada in over 20 years. I see what's going on there. I couldn't even recognize the country. I'm not talking about even the immigration. I'm talking about the leftist woke mindset. And here's the problem. Why do I have these Canadians up on the screen? The problem is this. So you have this money laundering going on, which is pervasive. The money laundering in the Canadian penny stock market is absolutely pervasive. Why is nothing being done about it? Because these criminals are much smarter than the regulators. Again, just take a look at this guy. Take a look at that. Again, you got Dicky Carleton. You got this fat drunken slob. Okay, so again, all these Canadians, they're all drunkards. All right, and they're lazy, and they're not that bright. Okay, like this guy, Mark Faulkner, that's the mall cop, this fat slob, who, by the way, he committed multiple acts of fraud. So you got the cop, that's the regulator. He's literally committed multiple acts of fraud. I'll show you what it is in just a second. And the problem is he should be in prison. He really should be. We filed a criminal investigation request. He's not, because his cronies, the buddies, they all help each other. It's a little tight-knit group. Okay, it's a little tight-knit group over there with all these regulators. This guy he doesn't have a law degree. He doesn't even know he doesn't have a law degree. He's the only regulator without a law degree, which is unheard of. He went to the equivalent of like a community college, which is basically a school for stupid people. Okay, he's a really dumb guy. Mark Faulkner is an incredibly stupid guy, and I'm not saying it because I don't like him. I'm saying it because it's a fact. He did a very sloppy fraud, and the cover-up was even stupider. Let me just show you what it is, so that because I can't get enough of this. I'm just going to show this to you real quick, because this is what happens. This guy is too busy. Mark, it's like the cop. Yeah, it's almost like these movies. You ever see like a movie where like there's like people are getting killed on the street, robbed, and the cop is giving a ticket to somebody for jaywalking, right? Like you see the Pink Panther, great movie. Peter Sellers' Pink Panther. Look it up on YouTube. The famous scene. The guy walks in. He's robbing a bank. Guy's robbing a bank, and the police officer is outside. And this is in Paris. He's outside, and he's like writing a ticket to a homeless guy who's begging for money in the street. So he's giving a ticket to the homeless guy. Meanwhile, right under his nose, the bank is being robbed. So right under Mark Faulkner's, that pig face's nose, the investors are getting ripped off. Canadian citizens are getting victimized. Okay, and money is going to fund, drug trafficking, terror financing, everything. Okay, that's what's sex trafficking. So check this out. So this is, by the way, very, very simple to follow. Mark Faulkner he basically halted the trading of a company I was the chairman of. The stock went up 300%. New World Solutions, we went up 300%. Millions of shares of trading. The stock was going to become like a 10-bagger. Okay, and by the way, the business is still going. We got revenues. The stock's not trading. Okay, but this guy, we've actually generated more revenues than the previous company combined, maybe in the last 3 years. Okay, it's incredible. This stock today would be up like 100x. Okay, maybe 10x. Okay, this should have been a 10-bagger stock. This would have been one of our, and we had everything lined up. We had acquisitions, M&A, we had a pipeline. Everything was lined up. Mark Faulkner halted the stock. Why? Probably because he's a racist and anti-Semite, or those are the motivations. Again, I'm not saying he is. We know that his friends are, which is Chris Parry, George Soros, who's a crook, who's basically been fined for scamming, thousands of investors. He created 600 fake accounts on social media to pump up stocks. He was running a massive pump and dump operation. He's still in business. He's still promoting stocks in the CSE. Now, Mark Faulkner wanted to get my stock halted and get me thrown out of it and get the acquisition or the merger unwound. Okay, and how did he do it? By coming up with a very clever scam, very clever. So, for example, we announced this merger in September. Stock starts going up. Middle of September, I get a call from them, or late September, I get a call from them saying, "Oh, I was the chairman." They said, "Oh, we found you to be unsuitable when you filed your last PIF, which is like a personal. It's a background check." Which I have background checks for all the Canadian exchanges, no issues, never had any problems with these people. All of a sudden he says, "Oh, you filed this thing, 18 months ago, and we didn't bother to tell you, but we decided to ban you, and you were banned, but we never told you," which is very suspicious because you would think if you're going to ban somebody from an exchange, you're going to let them know, right? So this doesn't make sense. Now, why doesn't it make sense? He sends me this letter. By the way, this letter was crafted about a year later. Okay, this was crafted a year later. So he sends me this letter, which basically is dated. The date is, I think, January of 2024. He claimed that they made a decision to ban me in January of 2024 for allegedly, being overpromoted. It was very vague. If you read the letter, it's all very vague. By the way, we got links below. All the documentation is below. It was a vague, very all cockamamie stuff. It was all bullshit because he had to make it up at the last minute. Here was the problem. The guy is so stupid. Mark Faulkner is such a dummy that he made a massive mistake. Number one is when he created this letter. It was backdated. It was backdated by a year because it took him a year, it took him 6 months to come up with this letter, which he had to do because that was evidence for a hearing I have coming up with OSC, with all these regulators, because I'm appealing this. This is a total farce. This is a fraud, and I am appealing this. We got a hearing coming up in May, but of course, it's the OSC. It's their buddies. They're all in bed together. They don't want to, they don't want these guys to go away, right? But it's a smoking gun. This is a letter. Allegedly, it was allegedly the decision was made in January of 2024. The reality of this, the metadata, we have it right there, is a screenshot showing the metadata. The metadata shows that this actually was made more than a year later, almost 11 months later, by Mark Faulkner. It was made by Mark Faulkner 11 months later, backdated. But it gets worse. It gets much worse. It is such a bad, sloppy job, because he also mentions that in this thing, the reason why they want to ban me is because I was making over-promotional statements on a website called CEO.ca in 2023, I guess, in 2023. The problem is I was never posting. I never posted on this website until, September of 2024. So a year after this thing was out. So how is it possible that I was posting on this? It's not possible. Basically, this guy was very sloppy. This letter is clearly backdated. The forensic data is there. And even worse, the evidence that he gave our lawyers, okay, this is the evidence we used to decide that you were being over-promotional. I'm going to do another video about that, but it was all basically tweets, Twitter, whatever stuff. Not me pumping stocks, not at all, but me actually criticizing stocks that were scams that collapsed. One of them was Data Metrics, which ironically, those shareholders are related to the people at New World Solutions. Totally, I have nothing to do, but I was basically criticizing a stock called Data Metrics, saying that their CEO was basically a dummy and it was going to go to zero. And it did go to zero. I have been right about every stock I have said was a pump and dump and a fugazi. Okay, look at my track record. We got a video here that was Versus. It's a stock that went down 99%. You got Visibility Group, which, by the way, I was promoting Visibility Group, okay? And then the CEO turned out to be a bum, and I warned everybody, this guy's a bum. That stock went down 90%. By the way, I lost money with that thing, believe it or not. What else did I tell you was a scam? Now Vertical, NOW, on the Toronto Exchange, or the Vancouver Scam Exchange. I told you that was a scam. That collapsed 90%. It came back a little bit. A lot of these stocks have come back a little bit. They're going to go to zero eventually. We got this new company called Adora, which I believe is a pump and dump. It's got a $400 million valuation based on nothing as of March 2026, March 25. I believe that stock will be back to a $5 million valuation within 12 months. This is the way it works. They have nothing to support that. It's just a pump and dump by some promoters, including Miss Piggy on Discord and Mark Faulkner's friends. Okay, Mark Faulkner knows what's going on. He turns a blind eye to it because, again, he's a crooked, dirty cop. Okay, Mark Faulkner is a crooked, dirty cop, and this is, by the way, the damage that he did. The stock was up, and you see it went flatline. That's where it was halted. But we had massive volume. It went up, 300, 400%, and he decided to halt it because, he was doing a favor for his cronies. And, I don't know, he maybe doesn't like me for some reason. I may not be likable. But, Mark, I'm not here to be liked. I'm just here to, make stocks go up. That's my job in a legal, ethical, and moral way. That's why I'm the #1 stock promoter on the planet. That's why my stocks, when I launch a new stock, it trades $20 million on day one. US $20 million, okay? My stocks, okay, in the US. And by the way, these are micro caps. These are $10 million market cap companies, okay? I get $20, $30 million in trading volume on day one, okay? That's more than your entire exchange. You got 730, look at it, by the way, they got 730 stocks, okay? Most of them are zombies. They don't trade at all. They're zeros. On a good day, they're getting $31 million in volume, okay, on a good day. I get that in one day with one of my stocks, okay? I mean, if it wasn't for me, your exchange would have gone bankrupt. My stocks were the #1 stocks on the CSE exchange. I'm going to show you that in a second. By the way, I can't get enough of just showing this over and over again, which is Mark Faulkner. Again, he's calling me unsuitable. But this is him. He's got no education, doesn't even have a stockbroker's license. Again, he defrauded thousands of investors. He's got multiple conflicts of interest. It is very possible, again, there's a lawsuit going on, which we have a link to by their former chief counsel. Yes, the CSE is being sued by their former top lawyer. He's suing them. And this guy must know all the dirt. He must know all the dirt on these guys, right? He's suing them. He's making serious allegations of securities fraud I think it's by Mark Faulkner. I think Mark Faulkner had some sort of conflicts of interest. Maybe he had stock that was owned by relatives or something. Something was going on. There was conflicts of interest by Mark Faulkner that were not being disclosed. And this is why this guy got fired, their former regulator, because he did not want to be going along with something illegal. These people have no problems. Tracy Stern, she's complicit. The older people, they're all complicit in the fraud going on there. Everybody at the CSE, the top executives at the CSE. Hang on a second. Let me just show you this. Let me show you this here. Let me just show you something here. I want to show you something which is disgusting. I'm going to show you something absolutely disgusting here. Okay, let's zoom in on this. Okay, so by the way, this is the Canadian Securities Exchange. This is their About Us page, their team. It's a total fraud because team About Us. I've pointed this out multiple times. I mean, I find this hilarious. So they have a picture of a black woman as allegedly that's their team. So you would think, okay, they got different people. Because Canada, Toronto, is mostly immigrants. Most of the companies that I have promoted of the Canadian stocks, mostly Indian, Middle Eastern, 1 or 2 Asians, and a handful of white people. But it's mostly Middle Easterners and Asians, okay? And most of the people in the finance industry are also the same. There's probably 60% of it. Toronto is like, maybe 30% white at this point. But look at this page. Here's what I find fascinating. So you got the black woman at the top. That's their what I call blackwashing. Okay, blackwashing. Okay, they're using a black face to make you think that they're a diverse company. Look at all these faces. You see any black people here? The only black man on this page. Look at this. You see any black people? The only black man on this page is James Black. Okay, who's a snitch. And who's a fugazi. This guy pumps and dumps garbage stocks on their website that go to zero. He's basically the Baghdad Bob. He's the Baghdad Bob of the CSE. Okay, and look at this. This is all the directors are white. All the directors are white. All the executives are white. Why is that? By the way, this is Tracy Stern. She's the chief legal officer. She's in bed with the OSC. She worked there for 20 years. Her best friend is Susan Greenglass, who regulates the CSE. So that gives them cover. Let me do something. Let's have some fun. Actually, hang on a second. Do I have time to show a picture? Hang on a second. Let me see if I can do this. Hang on a second. I'm going to show you a picture. Okay, hang on a second. I'm going to show you a picture of, I got some evidence for you. I got some evidence. I got some dirt. By the way, I'm not going to edit this because I'm too busy. I'm just going to post this and so you may have a delay in watching this. I got something to show you, but, all right, I'm going to show it to you at a different time. Whatever. Okay. Anyway, look, she's corrupt. She was part of the cover-up. So the people involved in this cover-up of the fraud of New World Solutions. Tracy Stern is one of them. She knew what was going on, as did Richard Carleton. That's the CEO of the company. That is this gentleman over here. Okay, that's the drunken pig, who's also best friends with Peter Nygard, and that is the gentleman. Let me just show you this again. Just I want to make sure that people know. That is Peter Nygard right there with the arrow pointing to him. He's a rapist and pedophile currently in jail awaiting extradition. So those are, that's their social network. And by the way, some of you guys are going to say, oh, it's just a picture. It's just a picture on Instagram. Oh, he doesn't know anything good. Come on. This guy, Richard Carleton, he's 65 years old. He's been in Toronto, and he's been in the business circles for his whole adult life, okay? The allegations about Nygard go back decades, goes back into the 60s. Everybody in Canada knew that he was a scumbag, and now may not be a complete rapist, but he could be, something very, very wrong. Not a guy that, you want to associate with, listen, they're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was like a Boy Scout compared to this guy. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein didn't force any girls. Jeffrey Epstein did not force himself onto these girls. He was basically a client. He was paying these girls. They all got money. They got money. They came back multiple times. They brought their friends who got money and came back multiple times. Nobody was forced. Peter Nygard would basically meet a girl. Well, actually, I got the video, which explains what he did. But basically, these girls were essentially raped. And I'm sure Dicky Carleton heard of some of these things. But hey, by the way, the allegations, look at the Department of Justice, U.S. Department of Justice indictment of Peter Nygard, and you see a similar pattern. Basically, Peter Nygard, how were these victims silent for so long? Peter Nygard was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, okay? Hundreds, he was almost a billionaire, selling like garbage clothing, which is amazing. Anyway, and this guy basically used his money, power, and influence, okay? He had a lot of lawyers that would basically intimidate these girls, okay? If a girl said anything, he would get the lawyer to say, oh, I'm going to sue you for defamation. Big law firm would send a letter. By the way, I am being sued for defamation by the Canadian Scam Exchange right now. They're trying to sue me anyway. Yeah, so they have a Norton Rose. That's their law firm. Okay, they got some sassy gerbil stuffer over there who's, trying to sue some corrupt gerbil stuffer who's trying to sue me for defamation. And this is what they try to do. It's the same game plan. Same game plan. Okay, this is what they do. They think that they have the money, the power, and they could do whatever they want. They're above the law. Dicky Carleton thinks he's above the law. And you know what? Mark Faulkner thinks he's above the law. That pig, Mark Faulkner, that fat-faced pig, thinks he's above the law. And you know what? I got news for you. He is. I'm willing to say Mark Faulkner is the most powerful man in the Canadian capital markets. Why? Because he's able to get away with whatever he wants, literally whatever he wants. He's above the law. He makes his own laws. Okay, as you saw, he decided to hold the stock for, because he doesn't like the guy. Why not? Hey, it's just like a corrupt cop. It's like a corrupt cop. Hey, I don't like that guy. I'm going to plant drugs in his car and arrest him. It's kind of like this is like a gang movie. Okay, like it's like, you guys ever see the great movie American Gangster? Great movie. By the way, one of my top salesmen had a small role in that movie. Chris, what was his last name? Chris. He had a small role in that movie. His line was, "Hey, where's something?" What was the line? I think it was something like, "Hey, where's a Chris Craft in my driveway?" I think that was his line. Something about a Chris Craft in the driveway. Anyway, he had a small line. Great movie, American Gangster. But what was the movie about? Corruption in the police department. Basically, if you're a drug dealer in Harlem, okay, you're pushing heroin, right? And you want to knock out your competition. What do? I mean, you could shoot them in the street, or you just give the cop a couple of bucks. You give the cop $1,000 and say, hey, listen, get rid of this guy over there. And what does the cop do? He goes, he plants drugs on that guy or whatever evidence, and hey, you're arrested for possession of narcotics or planting evidence. The ends justify the means. That is the way Mark Faulkner thinks. He's a dirty, crooked cop. He's incredibly stupid. That's why all this stuff is right under his nose. Money laundering, terror financing, drug trafficking, back to money laundering, all under Mark Faulkner's nose. I guarantee you 100%, okay, 100% that this is happening right now at the CSE, and also the TSX, by the way. Also the TSX. The TSX is incredibly stupid also. I got another video about that. I'm going to talk about Stella Yoon. Stella Yoon, the Chinese spy. She's one of their investigators, regulators. she's a dummy also. She's got, I mean, like they literally have money laundering that's going into terror financing under their nose. And, they basically send out letters to guys like me saying, oh, you're being over promotional. You're being over promotional. So what is over promotion? Let me just show you what is over promotional in Canada. So we get a screenshot over there, which is evidence. This is an email sent from James Black, which is this guy. It's in that picture. He's in the pink. You see those two gentlemen in pink shirts? Two gentlemen wearing matching pink shirts. Yeah, nothing suspicious about that. So you got the twink and daddy thing going on over there, and the black baseball cap. That's James Black. He's basically a moron, and he's associated with some of my competitors. Again, so this guy is in bed with my competitors, including George Siolis, who's been busted for a massive fraud by the Ontario Securities Commission. Again, he had 600 fake accounts. Thousands of investors were ripped off. He paid a big fine. I think he was banned for a period of time. For 10 years, he was banned. He lost his law license. It was he should have gone to prison. If he was in the US, he would have gone to prison. In Canada, you can get away with anything. You can get away with anything in Canada. You know what? And anyway, so George Siolis, again, it's kind of like this gangster movie, right? So George Siolis and this pig face Chris Parry, pedo face Parry, okay? Both of my competitors. Why do they hate me? Because I'm able to generate massive results for my clients. My stocks are going up 1,000%, 500%, massive wins. I'm taking away all their business. They don't like me, okay? Especially because I'm American, right? So they contact this guy, James Black, and say, hey, you got to look into this guy because he's saying mean things to us. He's saying mean things to us on Twitter. That's what the letter says. That's what the letter says. Let me read this letter to you. Hang on a second. What does it say? It says, Rob, have we had any interactions with Wall Street Report? So James Black, this guy in the black hat, he's writing a letter to these two regulators, to Mark Faulkner and Rob Cook, who's basically an old man with Alzheimer's who's basically there doing nothing. He basically goes along with whatever they tell him to do. He's a rubber stamp. He says, have we had any interactions with Wall Street Reporter? We have several clients featured on their site. Yeah, of course, their stocks are going up. And it seems linked to this account, which is especially egregious. Penny stock billionaire gang on Twitter. And it says, George Siolis and Chris Parry seem to be targeted in some of the comments. Ooh, I've been saying mean things about Chris Parry and George Siolis, and both have flagged me on the matter. Ooh, this was provided to me regarding Jack Marks, in quotes, host of the program, which is a link about an SEC thing from 30 years ago. And he says, other than being aware of the activity, I'm wondering if there are eyeballs from the regulators on these guys. Anyway, so what does he send? He basically sends us a screenshot of what I'm known to do, which is put out these charts. I put out a chart, where I'm highlighting what is happening in the stock. Is it breaking out? Is the stock breaking out? Now, these guys don't know anything because they're stupid. They don't know anything about technical analysis. They're morons. He doesn't know what's going on, but he sees an arrow. There's an arrow pointing up. It says moon, it says moon and an arrow. And I have a circle showing a breakout above the moving average. And there's another circle showing a massive increase in volume, okay? And I guess he thinks that is being, over promotional. If you draw an arrow going up and you draw a circle, that means you're a criminal. That, according to this guy, according to the Stella Yoon, okay? Am I saying to sell the stock? No. Am I saying that the stock is going to, $50? No. Am I saying money is guaranteed? No. I always say the stocks are high risk. I am the only stock promoter who actually wrote a book called 10 Bagger Blueprint. You can get this on Amazon, #1 bestseller. Why did I write the book? Educational content for investors. I want you to be informed to know. By the way, I give you my proven system for finding stocks that go 1,000% or more. I've had more 10 baggers than anybody on the planet. I'm going to show you that in a second. Okay, but I show you how to spot a stock early, get in early, using the charts, and when to dump the stock. Yeah, you got to dump some of these stocks. Okay, these stocks, they're I got a funny story coming up. You can't make a hoe into a housewife. You ever hear that saying? You can't make a hoe into a housewife. Okay, well, these stocks, these penny stocks, most of them are hoes. Okay, most of these stocks are hoes. They got no revenues. They don't have good management. They have mooch bums running the company. They may have a bit of a window to make something. A lot of them have an opportunity. Okay, They got an opportunity. Visibility Group had an opportunity. There was a window. There was what I call a 10-bagger window. That's why I got involved. But then the CEO blew it. He was a lazy bum, probably a drunk and a drug addict, probably. I don't know. Definitely a drunk for sure. He blew it. The stock went to zero. Yeah, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. These stocks, you gotta have some fun and then dump it. Okay. The only stocks you can wife it up, as we say. By the way, one of these guys who used that statement on the channel was a guy with a company called VST, Victory Square, which is another pump and dump. Well, actually not so much, but he used that line. His stock went to like down 90%, whatever. But I thought that was a funny line. He wanted our audience to wife up his stock. That's the line he used. Put a ring on it. Yeah, put a ring on your garbage stock that that you don't even know how to create value and promote. Anyway, let me show you something here. So basically, I wrote the book for a reason, so you know when to get in, when to get out of these stocks. And let me show you something. So my track record is, listen, I don't want to talk about myself. Let me show you. Okay, I've created $1 trillion in value. This is my track record on the CSE. Okay, these are just the companies on the screen. Those are just the stocks that were trading on the CSE. I got 3 more screens. So we got $1.6 billion in shareholder value. So all those stocks, the ones that went up 1,000%, 5,000%, 500%, 300%, 100%, 50%, whatever the numbers were. Okay, when you combine, when you add up the increase in value from the time that I got involved till my contract was over, till I stopped working with them, $1.6 billion at the peak. Okay, $1.6 billion potential. I mean, people could have sold and they could have gotten out. CBDT, I introduced the stock at a nickel, it went to $2.50. People could have bought it at 5 cents, 7 cents forever. It was 7 cents for like a month, 10 cents for a couple of weeks. Then it went to 50 cents, $1, $2.50. You could have gotten out at $2.50. It's up to you. I don't tell you when to buy and sell, but I did write the book, so you know the signals. And that stock gave the signals of when to buy and when to sell. But yeah, you could have sold and you could have made 50 times your money. If you put in 100 grand CBDT, you would have had $5 million, 4 months later. But anyway, these companies also raised $260 million as a direct result of my efforts because the stocks went up. Look, when you have a stock that's flying, you got a stock that's flying, you can raise all the money in the world. That's why my clients are raising millions of dollars. Okay, that's why they don't mind paying me what I charge because they can raise $5 million overnight, 10 million, 30 million. These are companies that have raised, again, 100 million, 30 million, 50, big money they raised because I brought in the liquidity. And you don't see this you don't see this anymore on the Canadian Exchange. You know why? I'm not there anymore. You don't see this. When I was promoting those stocks on the CSE, my clients were usually the top 3 stocks on that exchange almost every day. This is, by the way, my TSX results. So on the Toronto Scam Exchange, this is what I did on the Toronto Scam Exchange. So you see stocks like ESC Entertainment went up 1,200%. They raised like, I don't know, 15 million. NG Energy, Organic Garage. Organic Garage could have been a big winner. Stella Yoon, the Chinese spy, destroyed that stock. I'm going to expose that piece of garbage in another video. We're talking about Stella Yoon and the Chinese spy network at the TSX. Anyway, these companies that raised 85 million, shareholder value 450 million increase. By the way, so you got $2 billion in wealth I've created for Canadian investors. You got, was it 200 million? 200 million? Excuse me, $300 million in growth capital raised by these companies. That money from my efforts, 300 million in growth capital, that was used to build businesses, pay for salaries, hire people, research and development. And I'm sure a lot of it went into the CEO's pockets and all the insiders and all these pump and dump guys. That's not my business. That's what Mark Faulkner should be doing. He's the one, that's his job to be regulating these stocks to see what's going on. He's not qualified to do that. He's not qualified. He has no education. He's the only regulator without a law degree in these markets. I got a whole video about Mark Faulkner. Check it out on our channel. By the way, you want to know what I'm doing now? Here's what I'm doing. I got a 100% win rate. Okay, every one of the stocks I've launched in the last year, they all go up on the first day. Usually they double on day one, okay? I'm the #1 stock promoter on the planet. I'm not saying it because I'm bragging. I'm telling you it's a fact, okay? We have stocks that have traded $500 million in trading volume in a single day within the last year. Yeah, huge, okay? That was Seattle. Lottery traded, 300, 500 million in day. Yes, this is a fact, documented, okay? There might be people who are going to take credit. Okay, look at the stocks. If there's people who say, oh yeah, I was the one promoting that stock, it wasn't Jack Marks. No, look at the stock chart. Greasy George Tsiola's claims credit for a lot of those, CBDT and Fans Unite. Look at those charts when I'm involved and then when I'm not involved, and it's only Greasy George. When it's Greasy George by himself promoting that stock, he goes straight down, vertical. Like he was promoting CBDT when it went to zero. He was pumping that thing for 2 years as it went to zero. He's just a prostitute. He's a paid whore. He's a paid whore, just like all these other Canadians. So by the way, these are some of my winners. I'm just going to show you real quick. Lottery, we had $500 million in buying volume. Was it? Yeah, it was actually day one. Yeah, it was literally day one because it traded 200 million shares. 200 million shares on that day at $2 or $2.50, whatever it was. Huge numbers. These are real numbers. Seattle, we had $800 million in buying. Actually, more. Some of these charts are wrong. These are actually the charts. We had on one day, we had 100 million shares traded, and the stock went from $7 to $9. So that's like $1 billion in one day. You show me another stock promoter that can do that. Okay, I got 80,000 followers on TikTok. Some of my videos have 1 million views. Okay, Hoth. We got $60 million in buying on day one. The stock doubled on day one. This is just in the last 6 months. Aditex, the stock went up 85%. They raised like $1 million like the same day as a result of my buying. They had an ATM. I mean, I shouldn't have taken these guys. By the way, this garbage company. This is a fake. This is not a fake. This is like a dog. It's a dog with fleas. This company is going to be around forever, constantly diluting. It's going to be garbage. Anyway, yeah, the CEO is a loser because he doesn't put out news flow. He doesn't know what he's doing. Anyway, they had $20 million on day one. When I launched that stock, you see that spike in volume? You see those big spikes in volume? That's the day when I launched the stock. That's the day. You see those big spikes? That's because that's the day I launched the stock. You see those big spikes at the bottom? That's the volume. You see those big spikes? That's me. Again, big spikes at the bottom of the screen, those big green spikes, those are hundreds of millions of shares trading. That is me. Okay, I'm very proud of my work. Okay. By the way, everything I do is legal, 100% legal. I fully disclose everything that we get paid, and I even disclose how much we get paid because I have to do that by law, by Rule 17B. I'm the only guy who does it. These Canadians, they don't disclose how much they get paid. They should. The SEC should go after them. I think it's very unfair. I'm going to make a note of that. I'm going to contact the SEC and let them know this is. We have to do something about that. Anyway, Well Logistics, we got $30 million volume in over 2 days or in 1 day, whatever it was, which is like $50 million. The stock doubled in day one. Advent went up 200% from $2 to $6. That's wrong. $2 to $6. It tripled. We had 42 million shares of volume. Look at the spikes at the bottom. That's what I do. Worksport was a bit of a dog. We only had 5 million shares trading at $2 or $3. So it went up 50%. I think that's a failure if a stock only goes up 50% on day one when I launch it. But that was the biggest day ever. So for them, they were like, oh my God. I mean, the stock never traded that much. That was the biggest day ever, 5 million shares in 1 day. So these are some of my winners. Yeah, stocks which have increased, multi-baggers. CBDT, Peak FinTech up 2,000%, Nextech, Fans Unite, Imagine AR, etc. By the way, a lot of you saying, "Oh, those stocks all went to zero." Yeah, they went to zero. So what? So what that they went to zero? Like I said, you can't make a hoe into a housewife. They're penny stocks, okay? Sometimes there's a. That's why I wrote this book. That's why I wrote this book for you. And that's the regulator's job, okay? The regulator's job is to look at the fundamentals of the companies. And by the way, you guys are going to say, oh, this guy's a pump and dump guy. Well, if I'm the pump and dump guy, okay, the stocks went to zero, how come all these big investment banks put in $300 million? Because those are the guys that wrote the checks. It wasn't investors buying it. $300 million in growth capital was raised by these companies. Canaccord, H.C. Wainwright, Research Capital. I go down the whole list of Roth Cap, whatever it is, Stiefel, all these investment banks who get paid 10%, okay, of the money raised. They did their due diligence. They did their due diligence on all these stocks that are now trading at zero. Yes, that is true. These big investment banks that gave Peak FinTech $50 million, no questions asked, they did their due diligence. For them, it was okay. They're smarter than I am. They have MBAs. I don't even have a high school diploma. I don't have a high school diploma. Okay. I think I got into an early admissions program at college. I never finished at Pace University. So I don't even have so I may not have any. I'm basically a high school dropout, technically. Technically, I'm a high school dropout because, I got this early admissions when I was 16 and I went for like a year and I didn't finish. So maybe, I don't know. I never bothered to look back. All I know is I got my commodity futures broker's license when I was 16. Then I got my stockbroker's license at 18. And I was doing, financial stuff since then, which, by the way, is much more than Mark Faulkner, the crooked cop. Those are bigger qualifications than he has. He doesn't even have a stockbroker's license. He never took that Series 7 test or any of those tests. He's never done this. He's a loser. He's a straight up scumbag fraudster that's got to be in jail. Again, guys, we showed you the evidence. We showed you the smoking gun. This is a big deal, okay? My lawyer, Jovan Narwal, King's Counsel, okay? King's Counsel, it's a big thing in Canada. He's the one that spotted this. How did he spot? Because he represents major criminal cases. He does white collar and big crime. Guys who, multiple homicides, whatever it is. He's like the dream team. He's the guy that would have gotten O.J. Simpson off. So, he's my lawyer who's basically working on getting my thing overturned. We got a hearing coming up at the OSC. It's probably going to lose because it's rigged. Again, their hearing panel, 90% of the time, they go with what the exchange says because they want to keep the status quo. They're all in bed because they're working at the OSC, right? They're getting paid whatever. Their hope is that they're going to get hired by a law firm or by the one of these exchanges. They'll get much more money, bigger benefits. It's a swamp. It's like in the U.S. government, okay? It's like in the U.S. government. Somebody gets a job at the, whatever, FDA or whatever regulator for a year, or the SEC. They work at the SEC for 2 years, 3 years, and then they go work for defending, white-collar criminals or whatever it is. So they go work for a company that's committing all sorts of crimes that need to be covered up. It's a revolving door. So, but in Canada, it's very corrupt because they have what's called the tall poppy syndrome. They're all cronies. They want to look out for each other. They want to get along. Oh, don't make yourself too whatever. Oh, keep it all. They're all very like this. Okay, you saw that picture. Again, these guys are a bunch of. Hang on a second. Let me pull this off. This is that, my friends, is the exchange. Okay, they're all these people know each other for 30 years at the exchange, at the regulators. They're all in bed together. They're all corrupt. 90%, or I should say 90% of them are corrupt. These people at the top, they're all corrupt. This six pack over here, you got that pig, Mark Faulkner. You got the Alzheimer's, Rob Cook, okay, who signed his name on that paper. He's the rubber stamp. He's a crook. You got James Black, who's a snitch. You got Tracy Stirrup up top, who complicit because she oversaw. She's running the whole thing. You got Marianne Palangio, who's their chief financial officer. She's got nothing to do with me, by the way. I don't know anything about her, but apparently she backdated some financial documents according to the allegations from that lawyer who sued them. So Marianne Palangio with the smiling face. By the way, when you see a smile like that, yeah, she looks like a crook. She looks like a crook to me. Anyway, it's not me saying it. It's the allegations made by their former chief counsel, who's saying she backdated some very important financial documents, and people potentially harmed. I believe, I don't know the harm, but she basically is, let's just say, they all think they're above the law. They do whatever they want. And of course, you got at the top of the list is Tricky Dick. Tricky Dick Carleton over there. Tricky Dick is at the top. But who's Tricky Dick's boss? That's the Caldwell crime family. That's going to be in another episode. That's Brendan and Tom Caldwell. Caldwell Securities, Urbana, they own 50% of the CSE. They got a brokerage firm. They're money managers. They're Trump haters. They're America haters, but they love to take American money. And they got sued. They had to pay a $2 million fine. Excuse me, $1.8 million. They were fined nearly $2 million. That's Tom and Brendan Caldwell fined nearly $2 million by the Ontario Securities Commission for basically ripping off their clients, sending trades through their own brokerage firm so they could charge bigger commissions instead of getting best price. That's what they were charged with, okay? And they fought it. They had to pay out the money, and they should have gone to prison as far as I'm concerned, okay? They should have gone to prison, and but they got away with it because they got a lot of money to throw around. They got money. They're going to be suing me, I'm sure, okay? And that's fine for defamation or whatever bullshit. These guys are trying to silence, okay? Everything I'm talking about here is a matter of public interest. These are all serious matters of public interest, okay? And these guys are basically trying to hire these big law firms to get me to shut up. And I'm not going to be doing that. So sorry to disappoint you. Brendan Caldwell and Tom Caldwell, my next video is going to be about you and all your regulatory fines. I mean, this guy is basically the Bernie Madoff of Canada. Now, I'm not saying he did a Ponzi. As far as I know, he never did anything like that, okay? But he was fined almost $2 million for basically ripping off his investors, stealing money from his investors. That's what it is, okay? In other words, if I give you money, okay, if I give you money to manage, you're setting brokerage trades. Your job, you have fiduciary responsibility to get me the best price, best execution, or at least let me know, or you should disclose to me that you're running the trades through your own brokerage firm and making more money. You should disclose that. And apparently they didn't do that. By the way, Bernie Madoff, the Ponzi scheme guy, he disclosed that he was getting paid the commissions. He was claiming that's all he was getting is the 2 cents a share, whatever it is. All right. And by the way, for a long time so it's very weird. But these guys, again, fined by the OSC, fined by the SEC, there's something with the SEC with Oregon, a couple of other things. They got a track record. They got a rap sheet. They got a rap sheet. Okay, these Caldwells, and we're going to be exposing them. And we got some surprises coming up for Tricky Dick. Tricky Dick is coming to New York April 13th, and we got a surprise for Tricky Dick in New York. Tricky Dick, we got a surprise for you when you come speak at the Securities Traders Association at the New York Stock Exchange. You piece of shit, Tricky Dick. You think you're going to come to New York at the New York Stock Exchange right across the street from where George Washington, was proclaiming liberty, where we have freedom of speech? You think you're going to come to New York? You scumbag thief, you're stealing money from investors, you fraudster, and trying to silence freedom of speech. You're going to come to New York? I think there's a word for it in New York. It's called chutzpah. You know what that is? You Google it, Tricky Dick, okay? But let me tell you something. You're going to come to New York and you're trying to silence the free speech of Americans. I'm going to make sure you get banned from entering the country. I'm going to be writing to Trump. You got to be put on a blacklist. Entry ban, okay? This guy, by the way, committed multiple acts that could be considered felonies, lying to immigration officials, purpose of his visit. He comes to the U.S. to promote marijuana production, cannabis, psychedelics, cocaine production and sales through those companies, investment in those companies. That is that's illegal in the U.S., okay? When you come to the U.S. at the border, they ask you what the purpose of your visit is. If you told them, hey, I'm coming here to promote investment in cocaine companies or marijuana companies, They may ban you. They don't have to let you in. They've banned people from entering who've said that, who are honest. This guy's dishonest. He's a crook. Okay, he thinks he's above the law. We got to show him he's not above the law. No one is above the law. All right, comment below. What do you guys think? Let me know what your thoughts are. We'll see you in the next video.